Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy and Postnatal Entrepreneurs Collective podcast. I'm your host, Niamh Cassidy, and I'm delighted today to host our first ever panel discussion on the podcast. So what we are going to be talking about is pricing as a birth worker and all the different things that come up for us in that. And I am delighted to be joined by Natalie Abouchai and Emma Fitzsimons. And we are hoping to have another guest join us shortly who was having some technical difficulties. So when they get here, we will introduce them as well. So thank you very much, Natalie and Emma, for being here with us today. Could you both just give us a brief introduction?
Natalie, Natnat Your Doula on social media, and I am a pregnancy, birth and postnatal doula that covers the southeast and the southwest of England.
I'm Emma Fitzsimons and I'm also known as the Marathon Doula. I'm a birth and postpartum doula. I'm also a fitness instructor and I'm based in Cavan and Meath in the Republic of Ireland.
Thank you very much. So for both of you, and maybe we'll start with you, Emma, when you started out being a doula, how did you decide what to charge? And looking back on it now, was there anything that you wish that you knew then that you know now?
Yeah, so when I started out, which is 2 years ago now, I would have been probably, I don't think I was very confident in myself and in my experience, and my pricing was very low. And at the time, I think I was going on Google search and to see what doulas are in your area or in the part of the world you live in. And I was basing my rates on that and not taking into any consideration anything else other than that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might resonate with that. What about for you, Nat? What was it like when you started?
When I started, I was already working a full-time job in the corporate world. So I was earning a good salary, so I was kind of doing this as a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I wanted to do this, but I didn't know I'd ever be able to go full-time. So I also did what Emma did, and I looked online and I saw people were charging £600 and offering so much around the corner from me. But then I also saw people were charging £3,500. So I was really conflicted. I thought, well, do I go towards that end or that end? I didn't know. And I thought, well, I'm not going to be greedy. I don't need the money. So I'm going to go in low. Biggest mistake ever. Should never have done that.
So what was there a specific moment then, Nat, where you got to the point where you were like, I have to change this? Like, was there a burnout or a conversation or just something that twigged where you said, this isn't right anymore?
There was 3 things that happened. I can't remember the order they came in. So I was burning out. I was getting to the point where I was always on the road, trying to do my full-time job, calling in sick to go to births and things like that, giving so much of my time outside of what my contract was offering. So I hit the burnout point. And at the same kind of time, one of my clients that had paid me a really low fee said, after she had the baby, I can't believe you were so cheap. And I hate that word. I can't believe you were so cheap. Other doulas we looked at was so much more money. You should put your prices up. My chin nearly hit the ground and I wanted to say, well, give me some more money then. And voluntary redundancy came up in my full-time job. I thought, this is the only opportunity I'm going to get to take a redundancy pay, get out of this line of work and actually focus on what is now a dream for me. And I need to survive. I need to earn. So the 3 things combined were like the big catalyst that said, right, you need to actually put your rates up.
That makes so much sense. And sometimes it does take someone actually saying it to us, so that nearly gives you the permission maybe to make a change. What about for you, Emma? What changed?
I think it changed pretty quick because like Natalie just said there, I'm on the road, so my clients could be up to an hour away. So that's an hour in a car there and an hour in a car back. And then obviously having to work around my own work from home job as well, sort out childcare, sort out all the bits and pieces that need to be done before I can even get to my client. And I think when I really sat with that and thought about that, I had to say, well, I cannot base my rates on what a doula over the way charges because we have 2 completely different lives and I just couldn't do it, Is that if it's going to be worth it for me and obviously for my client, I'm going to have to put up my rates, which is what inevitably happened in the end.
And what I'm finding with working with birth workers and being in contact with so many different birth workers is that we're pretty much notorious for undercharging, particularly at the beginning and even long term. Why I mean, why do you think that might be?
I think personally it's because of female altruism being weaponized against us. So, and I know that sounds a bit controversial, but it's almost like it's expected of you to do all this stuff for people and only take bare minimum. You know, that this is your calling, this is your, and while it is absolutely 100% my calling, I feel that that shouldn't be an excuse not to charge properly for my services. Another thing I find as well is that a doula with other qualifications, so a doula that has hypnobirthing, a doula that has, lactation consultant, sleep consultant, all this kind of thing, that it's almost like you get your doula certification and then you're being led to believe that that's not enough, that you need to have other things on top of that. Whereas being a doula is, I mean, in itself on its own, is a really big deal, I think, and is a good service and something that deserves to be properly paid for. Whereas the attitude, I think, in the wider community is, oh, well, you need to have this as well and that as well, and the more you have, the more you can charge. And if you only have your doula certificate, then maybe you should charge less, which I don't agree with. I think being a doula is in itself worthy of being properly paid for or properly charged, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So Audrey has managed to join us. So welcome, Audrey. Thanks very much for coming. Can you just let everyone know briefly what it is that you do?
I'm a postpartum doula with Hold Doula Support. I support families in the postnatal part of the parenthood journey. I suppose I go in and just support mothers and fathers in that very precious time.
Great, thanks, Audrey. So we were just talking about why birth workers might charge low, in particular at the beginning. So Nat, I could see you nodding along with what Emma was saying there around how, as women, maybe we tend to undercharge, and then also some societal expectations. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
I absolutely agree with everything Emma was saying. It's as if women are expected to do things just because we love doing them, because we're the carers, because we love women and we love kids, and that needs to stop. That needs to stop immediately. If you think back to like the 80s with the big shoulder pads, the power suits for women, it's like, right, women have arrived, women are taking their rightful positions as corporate CEOs and things like that. That was a massive thing, right, in the 80s, but the salaries never caught up. We know that. I know, because I've just recently left corporate and the salaries never matched up with the men. Now, that whole women in power kind of thing has just been forgotten again.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people realise that actually being a doula is a powerful, badass role. When you have women crying to you, not in the moments after birth, but in the days, weeks and months afterwards, saying, you changed my life. I could not have done this without you. Thank you so much for being there for my husband, because he needed you too. Do people really believe that that magic that we bring to a woman, to her family, should not be paid? Should I really have to go to the job centre and apply for universal credit because it's not valued? No, it's not fair. So we need to get the message out there, and I'm trying to, that we need to be paid fairly for this badass work we do. And the only way we can get that message out there is if all of us stop being so ridiculous and undervaluing ourselves. Because the woman down the road for me that charges £600 and gives double the amount of sessions and time with families than I do for 2,500 is devaluing all of us. That needs to stop.
It's really hard when there's such a big disparity as well. And Audrey, for you in your own pricing journey and when you came into this work, what was it that you kind of found the hardest about picking a price, or what was the moment where you realized that you had to do things different?
That's a good question. So I worked within an agency at the first time when I first started out, and I found that I didn't have to think about anything in regards to pricing or stuff like that. So that took the hard part for me off. But then when I started working out on my own, I found it very hard to price myself then, because I kind of undervalued my experience, my knowledge. my education. And then when I started talking to other doulas in the industry, people are very protective of their pricing system. I don't know whether that's because others will undercut them or what have you, but I find if we are all on the same page and we're all charging similar prices, then people will go to you for who you are and not the price that you're charging. And they will look at your expertise, they will look at if you're connecting with them. So I just find it's kind of hard in the sense that what I found hard is when I've talked to some people that have more experience or that have been in the industry, in this particular industry, longer than I have, they're not as forthcoming with their pricing system or how they got to their prices, or they don't share their prices unless you're going to be a client. And I found that very hard because I'm very transparent when it comes, like it's all on my website, you know. I'm very honest, and I was like, I only repriced myself, and I think I need to look into that as well again. And I suppose it's situational as well, what you price, how you price yourself to what you think, you know, what your outcome, what your like your housing needs are, or what your bills are, or whatever, you know, how you value your own self, I suppose. And like what Natalie was saying, it's like we have to justify putting a high price tag on our value, and whereas nobody in a different type of role would have to justify that because that's just what's expected.
Mm-hmm.
And because women have done this type of work for free for a long time, for many thousands of years, they think, oh well, but why should people have to pay for it now?
And I think that's a really important point, Audrey. And I think people make it too simple. So this idea that women did it for free, but it was that women were part of a community where everyone had value and everyone contributed to that community. So paid work wasn't something that was necessary because everybody was contributing to the society. So this idea, and it's some, I'm going to go, it went started somehow in the Industrial Revolution, but that this sort of care work, the type of care work that we do, needs to be free, even though we live in a capitalist society. You know what I mean? We might not want to live in a capitalist society, but the reality is we do, and we also have bills to pay and food to put on the table. So our work needs to be valued and to be paid for. And I think at least probably, and we're all in Ireland or the UK, another challenge I think that comes up is because healthcare is free at the point of purchase, essentially for the woman, that the idea then that other people would charge for similar or adjacent type services can seem a bit controversial. And quite often I find, I don't know whether you ladies would agree with me, that it can be the people working within those services that might find that us private providers are the controversial ones for charging for our services, despite the fact that they do not work for free either.
I know very well friends of mine that are doulas that I've been doing this work for over 20 years. And for the first half of that, they did it for free because they could, because they had a comfortable lifestyle and they had spare time. They had a husband that would bankroll them, and they didn't have young children that they needed to pay for childcare for. And since they started charging, they now believe that they're doing like God's work and don't want to charge for it, just want to earn enough to cover their expenses. Or they might say things like, well, I only charge £800 for my whole package. And that's really just to go to the birth, you know, because I might be at the birth for 2-3 days. What about all the other stuff you've done? You know, and that really frustrates me because they're my peers and could potentially, would never say it to my face, wouldn't dare, but could potentially be judging me on what I charge because I'm very transparent. I share it on all my social media. I'll put posts up and saying my fees are £2,500, you know, and by the way, that doesn't stop me getting any bookings. And I've always known, I remember being a very, very young, or maybe a young teenager, my mum saying to me, people never go for the cheapest because they don't value it. Always charge more. And that started when I was selling homemade jewelry outside my house as a little kid. My mum would be like, don't charge 50p for that, charge £1 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because people aren't going to buy things that are cheap. And it's exactly the same for us. And it's the doulas out there, the birth workers, the hypnobirthing instructors, the yoga teachers, all these things, all these professions that we're all interconnected some way. They all charge ridiculously low fees because they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm in quite a unique situation. I know probably over 100 doulas, and I'm the only one that's a single mum with a child of school age. So how on earth could I possibly charge £800 to survive? Not possible.
Absolutely. And I think these are the type of conversations we need to be having out loud, and that are important to be had in public as well, so that people can really get an understanding of what's going on, and the fact that our work should be valued, and that the people need to live and be compensated. But it's not just that, you know what I mean? It is that the work is important and deserves compensation as well. I think, you know, there's a lot to kind of unpack in this. There's the people who are maybe undercharging, or what we would feel is undercharging, and then there's somewhat of a societal expectation as well around pricing and what the work is worth, and all of that. But at the same time, we see that even though I mentioned that public health care is free in both of our countries, that we also have a private health system adjacent to that. And people have no problem here in Ireland at least paying €250 for a 15-minute consultation with a doctor, whereas they might struggle with the concept of paying €170 for an hour and a half with a lactation consultant in their home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone who has come to them, they haven't even had to get out of their pajamas. And this idea that what we might charge in lactation for like an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of a home visit, which isn't even as much as what they might charge for a 15-minute appointment in the hospital, that somehow we're the greedy ones, or we're doing something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same here. I do know people that will spend a lot of money on private healthcare, or they'll spend £100 on an osteopath session. They'll spend £70 to get their lashes done because it's self-care. But when it comes to self-care for their pregnancy, their birth, or postnatal, which is far more important than getting your lashes done, they don't see the value. It's not their fault they don't see the value. No one's told them. You know, it's all very well, you know, with us being on social media talking about how valuable our services are, but the message is not out there. Tiny handful of people know what a doula is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, when I tell people what I do, they say, "Oh, you're a midwife." No, I'm not a midwife. I'm a doula. They don't know what it is. They can't see the difference. So it is tricky, isn't it?
It is. And I think, you know, the other half of this is that it's our jobs as the people in the industry to show people what the value is, to explain the work that we do in a way that's understandable, and to learn how to do that in a way that works, which for a lot of people, it means learning how to market and do marketing and talk about the work that we do, so that people can understand that value. Because most of us come into the work for that passion, you know, of being able to help people, of being a calling. But then we realize that we have to run a business as well.
Yeah, and that's something that most doulas I am friends with didn't realize, and they really struggle with. Promoting yourself, they don't see that as part of being a doula. They don't see that at all. But it is. How would anybody know who you are and what you do? How are you going to provide this magical service if you don't tell people what you do and how you do it, or share the experiences of other women? These are the women that I've worked with, and look how amazing their experience was. It's almost as if we're encouraged not to do that by a lot of birth workers. I
think there's, you know, again, if we bring it back to this idea of the work that we do and this societal expectation that maybe women's work is supposed to be free, that a lot of us have taken that on board ourselves, even if we wish we didn't, you know what I mean? Or we might not even be aware that we have. But when people say, oh, I'm afraid of I don't want to be salesy, I don't want to be this, I don't want to be that, it's because I feel that they're afraid of this idea. You know, inherently they believe it's wrong that we're charging for the work, and therefore talking about the service that you do, talking about your prices is difficult for people.
Yeah, I don't understand though, because, you know, people do have this this idea that this has been free for many, many years, hundreds, thousands of years. Well, so was carpentry. Find me a carpenter now that will come in and lay a wood floor for free, or do it for a couple of £100. It wouldn't happen. You know, people, men and women, seem to value men's work so much higher than women's, and it's not questioned.
I 100% agree. And I actually recorded a podcast yesterday. I think it's the one that came out today that we're recording, which is the 3rd of June, and made that point about how, you know, women's work is always seen as something that should just be done. But like that in the community before, even though, yes, that kind of doula work was done within the community for free, as you said, so was the carpentry and the plumbing and the house building and, you know,
all of childcare, all of it.
All of those more traditional male roles. But when everybody worked in community, it was a system that worked at the time. But we don't live in that system anymore. So therefore, the services that we provide do need to be charged for.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. As doulas, we talk about, you know, finding your village. It takes a village to raise a family. It takes a village to hold a woman, to hold the family. But we have to pay for the village now.
Yes.
And we all accept that. So we need to be included because we are a massive part of that village.
Absolutely. So something else I was thinking about in all of that was around, you mentioned, and someone else mentioned earlier as well, Nat, about your pricing strategy and your pricing visibility. So I know different people have different thoughts on this around whether your prices should be on your website or whether you wait for a discovery call to let people know your prices. Where do you land on that?
I am transparent from the start. My prices are everywhere. They're on my website. I've got them shared as a Google photo on my Google profile. They're going up, so they'll be changing everywhere over the next few days. They're on my website as clear as day. I put myself in the client's shoes because I was someone looking for a doula at one point for my daughter when she had her baby a couple of years ago. I want full transparency. I want to see what you've got to offer, how much it costs, how we pay. Do you take payment plans, or do you want it all up front? I want to know that. I want to know, do you offer discount for people that have financial hardships and all that kind of stuff? Because as a service user, I will not trust you if you are being cagey about your fees. Because what that says to me is, it's a bit like going into a jewelry shop and saying, well, how much is that ring? And they look you up and down and decide a price.
Yeah.
That's the impression I get about doulas that hide their fees. Why do you have to get suckered into the discovery call first to get all the information so that the doula then can decide what they're going to charge you? That might not be the case. They might have set fees, but it might feel like to a service user that you are deciding on the price based on what you think of me.
I
don't like that.
I think a lot of the training that doulas in particular get, birth doulas in particular, suggests that they should wait to the discovery call before divulging the prices. So I definitely know that there isn't a one size fits all for all doulas. Audrey, what do you do?
I have mine on my website, and they can book whatever way they want to book within the website. I just have certain so I usually do like a minimum 21 hours with a family, and then I am available from 9:30 in the morning till overnights. I love overnights. They're my favorite because I feel like I can just reset their whole house while looking after the baby.
Yeah.
They're getting a good night's sleep, and there's always just food in the fridge then for them for the next day. But like, I'm very honest. They're all on my website. So when a client gets in contact with me, I'll send them a link to my website and say, here's my website. Has everything on it. If you like if you want to book a call with me, just send me an email and we can have a chat face to face. And then if they 9 times out of 10 they will book a call with me, and I don't know whether that is because my prices were too low, or whether it was that they just liked what they seen when they looked at the website. In all, I'm a pretty open book when it comes to the website, so everything's there. And like what Natalie was saying, I do get that sense of, do I trust you before, do I wait for the pay, for the kind of marketing, the sales and the things on a call to get going, or like, do I look at somebody's pricing? And I'll always, like, when I'm looking at different things, I'll say, well, what's your bottom line? What's the price? Because I don't want to be wasting your time if it's something that I can't
Yeah.
afford. And I don't want people thinking, like, I just had this discussion recently with somebody, and I said to them, I said, listen, I said, let me know what your pricing is, because I said, I don't want to have like 5 or 6 calls with you and then I can't actually afford what you're offering me, because, and I don't want you wasting your time either. Like, and 9 times out of 10, I'll get the honest answer from them. And then if they don't want to give me their price, say, well, I'm probably not the best to work with at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Emma, where do you land? Because I was saying that a lot of doulas in their training that they've been given are often told to not have their price in front and center, and maybe have it after you've been able to prove your value on a discovery call, say, for example, to be able to then let people know how much it costs. What method do you do?
Yeah, no, I am very upfront about my pricing from the get-go. And I find the reason for that is like I come from an insurance sales background, and I think when you're upfront and honest about your pricing from day one, I think that's a trust builder in itself, because you're not gonna slam on this price at the end, they know from the get-go, and that kind of filters out the people that aren't going to book you. In my training, it was basically said that people in Dublin might charge more than people in the countryside, which to me makes absolutely zero sense, because when you live in the countryside, you literally have to pay to go anywhere. You need a car, especially in Ireland, especially where I'm from. So you have to have a car, have to have diesel or petrol in the tank. How I do it is I say that my petrol prices are included in the price. So I'm already factoring that in to my price as well. So that they won't be slapped on with an additional surprise, here's my fuel fees. That's all built into my pricing as well. So I think from the beginning, like I it's absolutely no shade to the training I got, but it would have been putting anyone in rural Ireland on a lower scale to anybody outside of Dublin. Maybe should be charging less, and I again don't agree with that, and I separated myself from that ideology very early on.
I think that's a really interesting point. It goes back to kind of where we started when we started the conversation about how did you pick your prices, and then a lot of people were just picking their prices based on what everybody else was pricing in their area, whereas then we moved on to talking about the value in your own costs and different things like that. I mean, the argument could be that the cost of living in Dublin is higher, so maybe people would charge because their costs are higher, but it shouldn't be a blanket rule of just because someone lives here they can charge more than someone who lives there. The other thing that was coming up for me in thinking about all of that was my experience as a consumer as well, Nat. I very much like to know how much something costs before I go forward with it. And like you said, Audrey, because I don't want to be wasting anyone's time. And I've been on those calls with business coaches in particular, those kind of programs. And we get to the end and I'm like, I'm sorry, you think I'm somebody else because, that is actually far too much money, So I tend, like you, to not go into that situation anymore. And I just say, tell me how much it costs up front, because I'm happy with the value, you know what I mean? But I need to know how much it costs, because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste my time. I don't necessarily think that it has to be done that way, because I think there are some people who will be comfortable with getting to know the person first, and that maybe do need a little bit more of the value put up front before they find out what the price is. But it's just not how I work. Like, all my prices are on my website and people pay upfront for my services. Now, obviously, I'm not a birth doula, so I don't have these huge packages that cost thousands of euro. But pretty much everything that I do is paid for upfront. I think part of a lot of what we've been talking about here is kind of what's going on within the industry itself and how do we navigate that. And I suppose this podcast and this idea of us coming together to talk about this was to bring the conversation out into the open among ourselves, among the birth workers to say differences of opinions, but also kind of where we think the challenges are. So what are you seeing yourselves in that the challenges are coming up there, Natalie?
Challenges in getting the message out.
Or that people have, we've talked a little bit about why birth workers might feel challenged in their pricing. Is there anything else that we might have missed?
I think when people are looking for a doula, they're not going to our websites not knowing what a doula is. They already know. They already know what the service is, and they already know what the value is. So I think we don't need to sell the value. So we need to be transparent with the prices, and we need to price our services fairly. And when I say fairly, I don't mean fair to the family. I don't care what your finance situation is. I care about mine. So you already know you need a doula. You already have an idea that you might want me because that's why you're on my website. Something attracted you and got you there. You know I'm going to bring value. This is what I charge. Straight away, this is what I charge. Do you want it? Yes or no? They're never going to go on your website and go, I don't know what the value is. I don't know what they're really offering. And I don't know what the price is, and book a call. It's never going to happen. You know, it's not. They're already there because they know they want you or want someone like you. But yeah, I don't really know what the challenges are. I think for me, my main challenge is making people aware of what a doula does, not what a doula is. So what we actually do when we're working with you, and that's what I find the hardest. Once I crack that, then the pricing will be easier.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, in what we were kind of talking about there, have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I suppose challenges here, I think the whole doula thing this far north of Dublin is still only kind of kicking off, that people think that there are no doulas around here. And then people think that they can't bring a doula into the hospital with them. That's another thing. And then society, something that I came up an awful lot of when I first started and I put my prices out, was people in my friendship circle asking me, why do you charge so much? You know, like, what is it? I mean, who would want that? That was another question I was asked. Who would want that anyway? You know? And so these are all the challenges that I actually wasn't foreseeing when I answered the call to become a doula.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, like, it is both of these things. I think two things can be true at the same time. It can be a calling in your life. It can be something you're drawn to do, to work and to support women through what is essentially one of the greatest things that's ever going to happen to them in their life. It is a sacred time. And I think there's so much focus on, like, it's absolutely none of my business what people spend their money on. You know, if people want to buy the travel system and do up a nursery and stuff as well. But I think people don't realize, and mums don't realize, that they can actually invest in themselves and, you know, get support. Especially if they're planning to birth within the system, the Irish maternity system, where support, to be fair, is needed because there is a management system in there already. And a lot of women don't realise that they have choices. And this is where a doula can really help. And I think this is a new notion now, especially in this area. So these are all like challenges that I didn't actually foresee I'd be facing when I started being a doula, and when I started thinking about what am I going to charge for doing a birth or being there, what kind of packages am I going to have? So it really has been a learn very quick as I go along scenario.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit in that we haven't talked that much about yet, and it's around that the women feeling not being able to spend the money on themselves. Because they count having a doula is spending the money on themselves, or getting a lactation consultant is spending the money on themselves, or doing a private antenatal class is spending the money on themselves and not the baby. Whereas buying those tangible things, the cot and the pram and the noise machine and the baby carrier and all of those things, they're things that we can tick off a list. So someone has given us those lists of things that we need. So society agrees that we need all these things, so therefore I'm allowed to spend my money on them. And then you have people like even your own friends, Emma, saying like, but sure, who would spend money on that? Why, like, who would pay you to do that? Because it's like, well, why would someone need that support, like admit to themselves that they need that support, to say that this support is for me and it's okay that I want and need support? You know, like there's just so much in that,
especially when it's a partner paying for it. If they're not paying for it out of their own money,
yes,
or it's a shared bank account, a lot of women struggle with a lot of women struggle, unfortunately, with justifying to their partner why this is money they need to spend.
And also, I would say as well, like it's a societal pressure or an expectation on what is okay to spend your money on and what's not okay to spend your money on. Kind of, it's like if I want to train for a marathon, you know, I'll get in with a running coach. I'll go to a personal trainer. I'll join a running club. If I'm getting married, I might hire a wedding planner, a photographer, people to come in and do these extra supportive things for me. In all areas of life, it seems to be okay to get support, but for some reason, women have a problem, or it's not a problem. It's like they have a boundary or a line where, should I actually spend this amount of money on getting support for myself? Like, I know any of the clients that have booked me, I've mostly done postpartum doula work, and I've recently started doing birth doula work. Any of the women that have hired me so far have all said the same thing to me, and that is, I decided myself that I needed this support the next time. So it's usually women having their second or third babies that have decided, I know what I want, I know what I need, and I'm going to get it for myself. So I suppose the message out there is to first-time mums as well, is don't wait until your second or third child to make this decision for yourself. You can make this and get this support now. You don't have to wait.
Absolutely. Audrey, I see you nodding away in the background there. Do you have, you know, how are you feeling about what we're saying there?
For sure, like I've supported so many women on their second and third babies, and even myself, I was lucky enough to have some of the doulas I trained with support me after I had my twins. I had an amazing support network after I had my twins, and it was in the middle of COVID. How important our work is, because obviously my parents were in isolation, my husband's parents were in isolation, half of my family were in isolation, so it was just, we literally just had doulas to come and help us, and it's so vital for us as a survival in those first after having the twins. So now it's really put a value on it, because when I first had my first son, like 12 years ago, I had my three sisters. Well, I have five sisters, but I had three who had already had birthed. My mom, I'm one of seven, she was there like every single day. My dad was there. My husband's parents were there, and we just had an amazing support network around us. So we had our village, but there's so many people nowadays that don't have their village, and they're older, becoming parents. Their own parents are too old to come and be the village for them. And what I always say, this is where the name Hug and Hold Doula came from, was I love going in and hugging and holding the family, because I'm there to support the parents while they hold their babies.
And I think that one of the biggest challenges then, like what we're seeing, is that the second time parents are more likely to look for the support because they realize that they need it. The other part of it, though, I think like why people aren't looking for that support in the first place is the idea that I should be able to manage. I should be able to do it by myself. I should be able to be a mum and household manager and in everything else. And when I meet parents, they're usually, you know, day 3, day 4, they're just out of the hospital. They're struggling to feed their little babies. And that's usually when I'm in the home. And what I'm always trying to portray to them is that you were actually never meant to raise a baby in a 2 adults or 1 adult household. There was supposed to be lots of adults. There was supposed to be the mums and the sisters and the aunties and the cousins, you know, that were supposed to be there. So actually raising a baby in with only 1 or 2 adults is really hard.
Yeah. When you speak to the women that have come through that whole postpartum period, and the ones that describe it as a good experience are the ones that had support, whether or not that was paid for or not. They had aunties, friends, neighbours, their mother-in-law, or even older siblings. The ones that struggle are the ones that said, well, my partner went back to work, my mum wasn't really interested, I felt isolated, all my friends were cracking on with life and I was by myself. They struggled the most because there wasn't any support. And you're absolutely right, Niamh, that women have this belief, we've all done it, we still do it actually, even though we know that we shouldn't. They have this belief that we need to crack on because we're women and we're strong and we're powerful and we bring all the love and all the care. So we should be able to do this without asking them for any help. And also, I know we've touched on, sorry, I'm talking too much, but Emma mentioned earlier on about people accepting that you are allowed to go and spend money on a wedding planner, or, you know, I don't know, interior designers, things like that. But these are things that you can do for free yourself. You can plan your own wedding and you can design your own home. But people still see that there's a value and they still believe that I'm actually allowed to go and spend money on that to get that extra support. I think where we all struggle is there is a free alternative. And the reason why we get the second, third, fourth, fifth time mums is because the first time around, they believed that the free alternative was going to provide the care they needed. So when there is something free, if there was a free wedding planner service, people would take the free wedding planner service. And if it was absolutely rubbish and the wedding just went to pot because of it, the second time round, because let's face it, the divorce rates are high, the second time round, they'd probably go and pay for the service.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we were talking a little bit earlier about how kind of our role then in the industry is to be able to give this information to women and families so that they can understand the value of what it is that provide, and do a bit of that permission giving that it is okay to invest in your birth, in your postpartum support, in your breastfeeding journey, because all of those things are actually really important.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge for us is not getting the message out to people that might hire us, it's getting the message out to other doulas, other birth workers. I saw a post on Instagram, it was on Facebook and Instagram, that really wound me up a couple of days ago, and I commented on it and I didn't get any response from a very, very well-known person in the birth world. She's incredibly known and she's great, and she's now running her own doula training organisation. And she shared a post that had the audacity to say, women, this is your calling. I can't remember how it was worded. If you want to help the women, if you want to help the women in your community, and I can't remember how it was worded on the post or in the caption, but the ones that basically can't afford it, this is your calling if you want to help them. No, it's not. That's not the calling. The calling is not to go and help women that don't have any money and can't help themselves. That's not the calling. The calling is to hold all women, no matter what the situation, and to actually advertise that to other doulas. If you've got this God complex, this savior complex, where you want to go and save all the women for free, come and train with us. That's disgusting. That's a disgusting message. And it makes the work that we do, the sacred work we do, so devalued. So to hear other birth workers saying it is just shameful.
I mean, you looked like you were...
Yeah, I saw that post and I saw your question on your comment question on it, and I've been watching to see if there was any response. I actually couldn't believe what I was seeing, because I couldn't believe what the original poster was saying, because it really does devalue. Like, you know, how do you explain to somebody the amount of background work that you have to do? Like, you have to know the evidence, have the evidence, build up a library of information, stay on top of any changes in evidence so that you can inform your client. Then that's all before you go on call. You go on call 37, 38 weeks. I know it's different for most doulas. And literally, that's my social life parked. That's me with a bag in my boot, ready to go when I'm called. And then I mightn't be home for a day or two or three, depending on how that goes, you know. And then, you know, and how do you explain that to somebody? And then to turn around and to expect that doulas should be doing this for free when you're a doula trainer yourself, and to put that expectation on people. And then, like, I hope that she's got a some sort of setup for those doulas for when they crash and burn, because that is exactly what's going to happen.
The doula training wasn't free.
It's really expensive, by the way. What annoys me about those kind of things is if I had seen that a few years ago and decided to train with them, I may have come away and needed to be held up and supported and loved on more by other women in my community, but that doesn't exist. And the reason I might have needed that is because I would have been burning out. So I would have needed the childcare that I couldn't afford because I'm doing doula work for free. I would have had to do another job on the side, so I'm not with my family, you know, and there would be no community to hold me. So it just doesn't make any sense to advertise that as doula training. It's diabolical.
I think it kind of brings us full circle to where we started around the expectations of this work being free or something that we should do purely for the love or the passion or the devotion. And then, you know, societal and previous expectations of that, and then coming around to seeing it within the industry itself, is all creating a compounding problem that we've been discussing, is that people find it hard to charge for the services that we provide. But as we've kind of brought through the reasons why, one, we can and why we should charge appropriately for all of these services are, you know, multitudinal and layered and all relevant and important and things that actually can't be argued against very well. So is there anything that we haven't touched on today that any of you would like to just kind of bring up before we finish?
Yes. I think the problem starts with calling this a calling. I've always thought that. It is a calling. You don't wake up, you know, one day and go, I'm going to be a doula. I might do that and go and get rich. No. Although you can make great money doing it if you charge appropriately. But I don't refer to this as a calling, because when you say it was a calling, it's almost like, oh, I just do it as a little bit of a side thing, you know, alongside my life. I don't need to earn money from it because it's a calling. No one ever says it was my calling to go and work in Tesco's, right? It's work, it's a career, it's a job. And I think doulas have to get that into their mind, especially new doulas coming in, not ones that have been doing it for 10, 20 years. I don't think you can do much with them. Can't change their way of thinking. But the new doulas coming in, if I had my own training company one day, I would want my trained doulas to know this is your career now. And there is career progression. So therefore there is more earning.
I think, you know, it's definitely a point around the language and how we discuss things. So is there anything that you wanted to say before we finish up?
Yeah, just I agree with Natalie, and I know I referred to it as a calling, because originally it definitely was that for me. But I think because my dream for down the line would be that this would be my full-time job, that this is my work, this is what I want to do. And I definitely couldn't do this for free. There's no way you could do this for free. And you shouldn't have to feel like you have to. And I think when I originally made that Instagram post, it was being put on me. Nobody can make you feel anything. But at the time of that post that I made, I was feeling like maybe I should do this for nothing. Maybe I'm supposed to do this for nothing. And I thought, well, then how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to get, you know, the kids sorted? You know, obviously I'm in a partnership, so it's between the two of us to arrange everything. But why wouldn't I want to build a career out of this? And I think I got defensive over it, and I was like, why do I even have to justify my prices? If you come on, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. This is what I charge. And if I'm for you, I'm for you. If I'm not, that's absolutely fine as well. But I shouldn't have to justify why I would charge what I charge when this is my work and this is my job, and I'm providing a service for you and your birth partner, and this is what I do. So that's pretty much it, Niamh and Natalie. You know, that's where I'm at.
I think that's, you know, a really great way to kind of round it up, because we don't need to justify what we charge to our potential clients, to each other, or to the wider society. You know, one of the benefits of being self-employed is that you get to choose that. for yourself and make it what you think is what's needed for your lifestyle and the energy that you are putting in. And then just to caveat that with that, when people do price too low, what I see is that they end up burning out and that they end up leaving the industry and they end up saying they can't make it work financially. And they go back to working in Tesco's or their accountancy or whatever it was that they did before. But to create a sustainable business, to create a career, we need to charge appropriately. So thank you all very much for joining me today. It's been really great having these conversations and getting them out in the open. And I do think definitely the panel discussions will become more of a feature on the podcast. And for everyone who is listening, please send us a DM. Let us know what you thought of this conversation. We're really, really interested to bring this out into the wider community and to have full discussions about pricing and our thoughts and our transparency around that. So thank you for listening again, and I will be back with you all next week. Bye.